Hey everybody, and welcome once again to the movie Battleground. I am your host today, Robert Parker, and man, we have some great competitors coming in today. Two newbies making their debut. One we've seen before, one's a relatively new face. I'm really looking forward. We got some great questions lined up, some great debates, some great answers, and a few curveballs I hope thrown in there too. So it's going to be a great night. Glad you guys could join us, and let's just introduce the competitors right away. First up, you know him as one of the admins here at Movie Battleground. He is making his Movie Battleground debut in the ring. He is Aaron Connole.
What's up, Robert? I'm finally here. You know, I've judged way too many of these things. Now let's see if I can actually fight in one of them.
We'll find out. Looking forward to it. And his opponent today also making his Movie Battleground debut. We have Jake Maringoni. How you feeling, Jake?
I'm a little nervous, to be honest, but I love movies, always have. It's my first love, but I will give it my best, and I hope I like to come back. I want to give a good debut.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so just a reminder to the people watching at home how I'm judging this. I am judging it based on the support of your own argument, as well as your knocks and counter arguments against your opponent. So make sure you get plenty of that in there. We'll do some opening arguments, some open forum discussion, some closing arguments, and then I will make my ruling. Any questions from you guys?
Nope. Not pretty clear.
All right, awesome. Then let's get started. Aaron, I'm going to have you go first. And our first question, our first debate of the night is, what is the worst movie directed by M. Night Shyamalan? What is the worst movie directed by M. Night Shyamalan? There's a lot of stinkers out there. Aaron, let's hear your opening argument.
I think the worst movie directed by M. Night Shyamalan is a pretty clear choice. The choice is The Last Airbender, because The Last Airbender is awful on two levels in a way that none of his other movies are. Not only is The Last Airbender a poorly made film from the ground up, both in writing and direction and acting, it's just horribly made on all fronts, with the exception of the CGI in the movie, which is half decent. But it also bastardizes a show that is one of the best animated shows out there, and it insults a fan base that is so large and so vocal to the point where there is an extreme amount of hatred against this movie, against something that should have and could have been a big, amazing franchise. But it didn't, because M. Night Shyamalan fucked it up. That's why The Last Airbender is the worst.
All right, a strong opening pick there, but there's plenty left to choose from. Jake, what's your pick and why?
I picked After Earth, the film he did right after he did The Last Airbender. Did you ever watch a trailer for After Earth? Because
yes,
if you would notice at the very end of the trailers, every trailer that came out, they did not mention him once. Not in the whole just big font directed by M. Night Shyamalan, not even in the small font that they usually have for smaller films. Nothing. They did not mention him once, and for good reasons, because all of his other films crap. But After Earth is the one that really solidified him as a bad director in this day and age. He had made great films like The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, films that got him Oscar nominations and made over $300 million at the box office. The Village started to go a little decrease, started going down, Lane in the Water, terrible, Happening, terrible. And then everyone thought that The Last Airbender was his worst film. And everyone thought that when After Earth would come out, oh, it's got Will Smith, it's got Jane Smith, it's going to go up a little. But, I mean, there's been so many similarities with Battlefield Earth and all the Scientology themes about suppressing your emotions. And that's when a lot of the criticism and controversy for the film started coming up. It got 11% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The nepotism of casting Jaden Smith in the lead role, when he has no talent, no charisma, a la his father. I mean, the whole film was made so that Will Smith could solidify Jaden as a superstar, as a movie star. And the problem with that is that he has no talent, he has no charisma, he has nothing that Will Smith had. And what's worse than that, it almost, and I think it destroyed Will Smith's career. That was his lowest grossing film in 2 decades, since I think Independence Day. That was his lowest grossing film. He had consecutive $150 million domestically, and I think $300 million worldwide. To destroy Will Smith's career, to completely destroy Jaden Smith, and to show that M. Night Shyamalan was just a stand-in director with no artistic integrity for the film. There's nothing that looks like an M. Night Shyamalan film. That's how bad the film is. There's nothing to it, and there's nothing that feels like an M. Night Shyamalan film. The Last Airbender has those fantasy scenes. Even Shyamalan has a cameo in the movie, if you remember. There's just nothing that says that this is an M. Night Shyamalan film. That's why it's his worst film, and it completely destroyed his career, and he had to go back to making micro-budget films.
Alrighty, very strong out of the gates, not pulling any punches for sure. I have a timer ready to go. We're going to go for 6 minutes in an open forum. Make sure you guys both get some points in against each other and to support yourself. Anytime you're ready, go ahead, 6 minutes.
Okay, so to address your opening point to the fact that M. Night Shyamalan's name was not put on the trailers for After Earth, that is not because After Earth is a bad movie. And yes, I will give you that. After Earth is not a good movie. But his name wasn't on the posters because he fucked up The Last Airbender so bad that he had such a bad association with his name after that movie that it was immediate box office poison, besides the fact that the movie was bad to put his name on there. The Last Airbender is the reason he hit it. Also, to address your Rotten Tomatoes thing, yes, After Earth has 11%, and that's a pretty low score. Last Airbender has 6%. Do you know how often movies get that low? It's so rare. Fantastic Four was one of the most hated films in the last couple of years. Even that hit double digits. Transformers, each and every one of them, no matter how bad they get, can at least hit double-digit like rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The Last Airbender has 6%. That is insane how low a like rating that is. Also, with After Earth, yes, again, it's not a good movie. But you talk about the fact that it doesn't have any of M. Night Shyamalan's, his directorial style on it, and that it makes him a stand-in director. That doesn't... The Last Airbender has Shyamalan's directorial style on it, and it's worse for it. After Earth is bad and it's forgettable, but it's forgettable. The Last Airbender is so bad that we still remember to this day how bad it is. Most people don't even realize After Earth is an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and that's because of how bad Last Airbender is. They didn't want people knowing.
I'm going to hop in here just for one quick second. Fantastic Four has a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. It did not hit double digits. Continue.
Okay, that's fair. I thought it close enough.
Oh, yeah. So you mentioned that the film looked good and that the film had the visual effects. I mean, yeah, the visual effects are fine in The Last Airbender. They're not the worst thing and they're not the best thing. I've seen better films and I've seen worse films with visual effects. It's serviceable, and that's what I'd rather prefer. Last Airbender has no directing style, and well, that's kind of true. There's still those long takes that he still does. It still looks grandiose and it still looks epic. But my point is that it is a fun film and it's for kids. You can enjoy it if you're a kid and you just turn your brain off completely. I think also that the film is it's almost a comedy. I've seen that film at least 5 times. The last time was probably a year ago, and I watched it with a couple of friends and we were drunk, but we really enjoyed it because it's just got so much incomprehensible dialogue, so many weird shot and just choices that Shyamalan made, but I can enjoy that film as a comedy. I'd rather enjoy something incomprehensible as a comedy than something that's serious like After Earth, with the whole idea of danger is real and fear is a choice. I mean, I think the damage was more done to After Earth than it was to Last Airbender. And to close my statement, I think that you can't make a good Last Airbender movie. I think it's almost impossible because getting an animated show and then turning it into a movie, a live action movie, has that ever been done right? I can't really think of one, but I don't think it has. If Martin Scorsese or even someone like Alejandro Inarritu or, I don't know, any director, Spielberg, I don't see them doing The Last Airbender any better than Shyamalan did. That's what I want to say, because I think that Spielberg would have put his style into it, but with the script, with the way that it was written, and to turn a season with 24 episodes into a film, what do you take out? What do you put in? How do you keep it faithful to the adaptation? I think it's not Shyamalan. That's my problem. It's not Shyamalan. That's why I think After Earth is much more of a damage to Will Smith's career and his own.
I think that the Last Airbender, the show Avatar, could be adapted into a good film series. I think the issue is exactly what you said. It's what do you leave in and where do you cut it. The problem is with seasons that are this long, to make a proper movie, you would have to cut it into half seasons and almost make it a Harry Potter length franchise, and do it in installments where you can see the character's slow progression of growth over time. The issue is M. Night Shyamalan did try to take a 24 episode show and pack it into one movie, and what do we get because of that? We get an exposition heavy movie, which ruined it. Avatar was a show that built itself on its visuals and its beautiful animation and the stuff that these people could do with the airbending. In The Last Airbender, we get 6 dudes to move a pretty looking rock. That's embarrassing.
But that's funny. That is enjoyably entertaining because it is so bad.
But that shows that it's an awful adaptation. That doesn't mean, just because it can be funny in a bad way doesn't mean it's a good movie. Okay, The Room. The Room is a movie that people love because it's so bad it's funny. That doesn't mean it's a good movie, though. You objectively look at it and say, this is a horrible film, one of the worst ever made. Sure, you can look at it and find some enjoyment in its awfulness, but that doesn't mean it's not a bad movie. After Earth is boring and forgettable, yes, The Last Airbender is more memorable, but that doesn't mean that it's better than After Earth. It is a worse made film. Also, talk about killing Will Smith's career. Will Smith's career is not dead from After Earth. Will Smith is still making movies. Yes, he went to smaller films, but he had Suicide Squad, which is a success. He's going to be in Suicide Squad 2, and, depending on how DC gets their shit together, he is supposed to get his own Deadshot solo film. So he does still have a career. You want to talk about killing careers? Let's talk about Noah Ringer. When's the last time we heard from that kid? The Last Airbender, no, he was in Cowboys and Aliens, I think. That career killer. Let's talk about Nicola Peltz. Her career never took off after this movie. Let's talk about Jackson Rathbone, who had the Twilight franchise.
Time there, I gotta call you there. All right, so we're gonna go into closing arguments. You both guys, it's really, really close right now. I'll be honest with you guys. So make sure you take your time with your closing argument. Take your time, think of what you want to say. Aaron, we're gonna start with you. Wrap it up in a nice little bow and sell it to me.
Okay, so you mentioned
Aaron first.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. The Last Airbender is the worst M. Night Shyamalan movie simply because it is the worst we have seen in all aspects. It is awfully directed. It is awfully written in terms of both dialogue and adaptation of the show. It is horrifically acted. The closest to a good performance we get in this movie is Dev Patel as Zuko, and even then it's passable at best. There is no good performance in this movie. There is no proper direction. He does not know what he wants to do with this franchise, but he clearly wanted to try and make a franchise and failed. Yes, it can be funny if you're drunk and watching it, but that doesn't mean it's better. After Earth is blander and it's more forgettable, yes, but After Earth is so bad that it's memorable. And it leaves a lasting impact of how bad it is. After Earth is a movie that you watch and forget about 2 hours later. The Last Airbender scarred an entire fan base, and that's why it's the worst M. Night Shyamalan movie.
All right, that was a strong closing. We'll pass it over to Jake, finish it up, and I'll take a look at my notes and make a ruling.
You mentioned that the girl, Nikolai, whatever her name is, that she did nothing after that. Yeah. She was in Transformers 4, Age of Extinction. Okay, regardless if that film is bad or good, she's in that, okay? That didn't destroy her career. It doesn't matter if it was a bad movie. It's a giant $200 million film, and she was in that. Jackson Rathbone was in Eclipse, and he was in Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2. After that, his career's fine. He's just doing other small stuff. That doesn't matter because of The Last Airbender. It was just because Twilight was terrible. It's nothing to do with The Last Airbender. You're also forgetting that the score from The Last Airbender by James Newton Howard, it's pretty good. That got awards. I'm not 100% sure, but it got awards for its score, and it didn't win, but it got nominated. And that's like the only good thing that got nominated for. You also mentioned that Dev Patel gave a good performance. I think he did. Him as Zuko was, I think, a brilliant casting decision, and he did a fine job. And my last point I want to make is that in The Last Airbender, they're all playing characters. When you see, what's his name, Noah Hawley as Aang, you see him as Aang, or as they pronounce him, Ung. You see the chick as Katara. You see Jackson Rathbone as whatever his name is. I'm blanking. What's his name?
Sokka.
Sucker, thank you. You see them as characters. They're still playing characters. In After Earth, I don't see Jaden Smith as whatever his name was. I see him as Jaden Smith trying to act and failing horribly. I see Will Smith as Will Smith. I don't see them as the characters. In The Last Airbender, I see them as the characters. I don't in After Earth. It was just a whole film about trying to get Jaden Smith to be a superstar, and that's why that film sucks.
All right, we're gonna call it there. Just one really quick fact checking on the score argument that was brought up. The International Film Music Critics Award, or the IFMCA, in 2010 did nominate James Newton Howard for Film Composer of the Year and nominated Last Airbender for the Best Original Score for a fantasy, science fiction, or horror film. So
exactly.
It did get some minor award buzz around the score. So that is just, I just wanted to clarify that is not just something that he made up at the end. That is true. I'm just going to take one quick second to figure out what I want to do here. That, for a first fight for both of you, that was coming out of the gate strong. Both of you guys are not playing around tonight, seriously. Great arguments for your own against the other. This is just a solid fight. If I have to lean one way, I think just a little bit, I have to lean Aaron. I think his opening was a little bit more focused, whereas Jake's was a little bit more rambly. He still had a lot of good points. Jake made a lot of good points about how it was just forcing Jaden Smith down our throats, which, yeah, it was. And how...
Phrasing.
Yeah,
you say that.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah. Phrasing, sorry. But, Jake had some great arguments about how, it's serviceable, it's funny because it's so bad against Airbender, but I think Aaron really wrapped it up in his closing by just saying it's exposition heavy, it is just an awful adaptation and scarred a fan base. I think that was just a point that couldn't be countered because, yeah, I got to go Aaron on that one. So we're 1-0. The match is far from over. We have at least 3 questions in the main round left, and if Jake can get one here, we'll go into some speed round later on. We're going to go right into question 2.
Hold on, I just have one question.
Oh, go for it, yeah.
Jake, you're telling me you didn't see the brilliant Cypher rage when you look at Will Smith in that movie?
To be fair, I do know the names. I just didn't want to put that in my argument.
I had to look it up, so don't worry.
Tirade. They're so funny. I love that. I love those names. But yeah, no, you made good points. No, I can't complain about that.
Yeah. All right.
They're both shit. Let's agree.
Very well thought, both of you. We're going to hop into round 2. This time, Jake, we're going to have you doing the opening first as we answer the question, what comic book-based film features the best ensemble cast? What is the best ensemble cast in a comic book-based film? Jake, for your opening arguments, take it away.
It was hard, but I think, in my mind, it was a kind of an obvious winner, and that is the Sam Raimi 2002 Spider-Man film. The first one in the trilogy. I would say that as far as casting goes, everything was 10 out of 10. Everyone complains about Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, but people forget that he's a really, really good Peter Parker, better than Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield. Kirsten Dunst, as Mary Jane, I think was an obvious choice, and she just fit the role. And the big one I really want to talk about is J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. That has to be one of the top 5 best casting decisions of all time. He fit the role like a glove, just so perfectly as the character that you quote that guy forever. We can get Julia Roberts in a thong. We can get a picture of this weirdo. I mean, what are you waiting for? Chinese New Year? I mean, that's just perfect casting. He knew exactly what he needed to do for the role. That's why we have not seen him in the Amazing Spider-Man series, and we have not yet seen him in the MCU. That's one of the best casting decisions I've ever seen in my entire life. And when I think of J. Jonah Jameson, I think of J.K. Simmons. And now he's an Oscar winner, so, I mean, that's also something. Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin was an absolute perfect decision because he can be both dramatic. He's a 2-time Oscar-nominated actor. You see him well dramatically as Norman Osborn, but then you can see him hamming it up as the Goblin when he goes, Godspeed, Spider-Man, and all those monologues that I just quote to myself. I mean, back to formula. I mean, those are just brilliant. I quote that guy for the rest of my life because I have a shirt with Willem Dafoe's face on it that says, back to formula. That's how great of a character he is, and his monologues are perfect. Also, you have Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben, Rosemary Harris as Aunt May, perfect. Bill Nunn as Robbie Robertson, rest in peace. Elizabeth Banks as Betty Brant. Joe Manganiello as Flash Thompson. And, of course, the one main casting decision I'm really happy to say, Randy Savage, wrestler, as Bonesaw McGraw, I think was absolutely brilliant. I mean, Bonesaw is ready. I mean, that has to be one of the best. I mean, for wrestling, when you think of wrestling, it's either going to be Hulk Hogan, The Rock, or Randy Savage. And they went with Randy Savage because of his history as a wrestler. And I think that was perfect to see him face off against Spider-Man. I think it's just perfectly cast, and that's what I'm going to say.
Great opening argument. Yeah, definitely some strong hitters in that. You definitely brought them up, and I wrote them all down as best I could. Over to Aaron for your choice. Best ensemble cast in a comic book-based film.
Okay, so I went with a little more of an unconventional choice, but it is a personal favorite of mine. I went with Avengers Age of Ultron. Most people, when you think about best ensemble, the natural opinion is to jump straight to the Avengers. And that is not a bad option either. However, the reason I went with Age of Ultron is because I think the Avengers is a little bit too focused on Iron Man, and it's not as much an ensemble. Also, we haven't known the rest of the characters long enough to really see a personality develop for them. With Avengers Age of Ultron, not only does it add new characters to this ensemble, but it takes the original 6 from the first Avengers and gives each and every one of them a purpose within the plot. The problem with the first Avengers is, in my opinion, with the ensemble, a lot of them don't have a purpose within the plot. Like, Iron Man has a purpose within the plot. Thor, with his relation to Loki, has a purpose within the plot. The rest of them are kind of there just because they're Avengers, and Hawkeye is barely even there to begin with. In the second film, every character has an arc. Every character has a purpose. Hawkeye is useful and has a great performance pulled in by Jeremy Renner. And we also introduce new characters like the villain of Ultron and the heroes of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch to bring together an ensemble that actually feels like an ensemble, where every player has a part to play and every player, for the most part, is on an equal ground.
All right. Another strong pick by Aaron. These are arguably two of the best, two titans of comic book based films, two titans of ensemble casts, and I'm gonna love to see them go head to head. You guys are gonna have 5 minutes of open forum starting now.
Okay, I want to
mention.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. You mentioned the main 6 Avengers, but you're talking about the sequel, right? As in the best ensemble. I'm not mistaken. Okay. Then why did you not mention Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen as the twins?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. I
He
probably
didn't
wasn't
mention
paying
that.
attention.
He didn't mention the performers, but he mentioned the characters.
Okay, fine. But you're forgetting to mention that they had just terrible accents throughout the film. They were going over and over. I mean, Aaron Taylor Johnson went British, and then he was going Russian, and he's supposed to be Slovakian. And same with Elizabeth Olsen. She's doing, I think, worse. I mean, you can hear that American come in. And you also didn't mention the first Avengers, and I think they had a better cast. I mean, everything was perfectly designed for those characters. I mean, you forget that Tom Hiddleston isn't even in Avengers 2, and I think he's one of the best villains in the MCU. And Samuel Jackson has more of a character in the first film. He's the one getting them all connected. And also, he's only in 3 scenes. 3 very small scenes that do very little to the plot. And he has more of a role in the first Avengers. He's the one getting them all together so he can have the Avengers Initiative and have them save New York from the Chitauri. You forgot to mention that Clark Gregg is a great supporting role in the first Avengers. And because he's died in the first one, he's not in the second one. He had a perfect arc. He wanted to impress Captain America because he was a big fan of him when he was a kid. And I think that also played over with the first Avengers and how it shows it connected them together. And I think that's what makes a good ensemble, is when you have all these pieces connected. And that was Clark Gregg. And I think that was perfect. So I'm really upset that you didn't choose the first Avengers, because I'd be giving you the win there. But I think that's why Avengers Age of Ultron just doesn't work. And there has smaller roles like Andy Serkis. He's in one scene. And he just doesn't appear again. That doesn't really seem like good casting decision to me.
That scene was set up for the future. That character was only in there just so they could set up for the future, specifically with Andy Serkis. But with Avengers Age of Ultron, the main reason why I would choose it over the first Avengers is because in the first Avengers, that movie is mostly the Iron Man show. it's all about Iron Man. In the second one, each and every character has a proper purpose. Captain America is only on that helicarrier in the first one because he's Captain America. Hulk is only really there because he's Hulk. I mean, sure, you can say he's a scientist, but they don't actually give a real good explicit reason as to why he's there. He's brought on because he's the Hulk. Black Widow is there because she's Black Widow. They don't have actual use within the plot. In the second movie, each character is given an arc to follow. Tony Stark is dealing with his inner demon of creating the villain and dealing with that guilt, also trying to consistently stop it. And this villain was born of his inner guilt and him trying to stop terrors, and by doing so creates it. Captain America is still dealing with the troubles he had in Winter Soldier and dealing with the fact that the world is not the same as it was when he went into that ice. And you see that carry over from Winter Soldier, and he's dealing with it more and more in this movie. Thor's part in the movie is going outside, and it helps to set up and build out the further universe, something that the Avengers didn't really do. Most of Thor's relevancy in the first one is in relation to Loki. And speaking of Loki, yes, Tom Hiddleston is not in the second, and though I think Tom Hiddleston does give good performances in the MCU, he's not one of those make-or-break characters. The Thor movies are not that great. So just because Tom Hiddleston is in them does not mean they're great films, and it does not mean he makes or breaks performance. Instead, we replace Tom Hiddleston with James Spader as Ultron, who does a good enough job with the time that he's given to be a proper villain and have proper stakes within the plot. He's genuinely a villain where you feel like this guy, for a portion of the movie, is unstoppable. Obviously, in your mind, you know that he's going to get stopped because the movie has a certain amount of runtime and has to end at some point, and he's not going to carry over. But for most of that movie, they set him up, and he plays it well enough that you feel like he is unstoppable for a bit. He's always one step ahead of the Avengers because of the nature of what the character is, and you see the group working together to move to stop that. Plus, with Spider-Man, I'm sorry, but that's not a complete and full ensemble cast. You have your couple of leads, but if you listen to some of those characters that you're mentioning at the end, Robbie Robertson, Elizabeth Banks, Joe Manganiello, Bonesaw, between the four characters, they have like 3 scenes total in the movie. That's not an ensemble. That's called having lead and supporting characters. Avengers is a proper ensemble in which you have multiple major players sharing screen time and sharing importance within the plot.
Got about 20 seconds. Somebody get some points in.
All right, so you mentioned that Iron Man, it has more of a character in the first Avengers, and then in the sequel, they kind of spread out the characters. You're forgetting that he created Ultron. He created the main villain, and he also created Vision. That doesn't really sound like ensemble. That feels like just Tony Stark, another character, another Tony Stark adventure with
and
the other Avengers.
Right there. Time right there. So we're going to go into closing arguments. Jake, I'm going to have you wrap up first, then we'll hop over to Aaron, and I'll make my ruling.
So I think that Avengers 2 is just a retread of the first Avengers. You go with the sequel, and I feel like the first Avengers had its cast perfectly because it set it up. It set it up with each of the films. It had those characters. And then you put it into the first film. You're forgetting to mention that Bruce Banner is there because the Tesseract is emitting gamma radiation, and he is the number one person in gamma radiation. That's why he's there. They didn't just bring him in just because he's the Hulk. He's there because he's Bruce Banner, not the Hulk first. That's just a side effect, and we know what happens in the first Avengers. So I feel like you're omitting that. Iron Man did create... I think Iron Man, it is another Tony Stark adventure because he created Ultron and Vision. He created 2 characters. I feel like that's more of just a Tony Stark shooting a rodeo going on, and I don't think that's fair. You also mentioned that Thor is there just to set up another Avengers film. That's what Avengers 2 felt like. All these characters, you got Thor, you got Falcon, they mention at the end, so it doesn't matter, but Thor is there just to set up another sequel so he can get the Infinity Stones. That's not really there really doesn't need to be there because he just wants to set it up for Thor Ragnarok and Avengers Infinity War. And I'm also want to mention that James Spader was just a Tony Stark ripoff with all the quips and all that, and it felt like we're just seeing Tony Stark again, which further proves my point that it's just a Tony Stark adventure.
All right, good closing argument there, and over to Aaron. Wrap it up.
All right, so just to defend the point that you brought up real fast about it still being Tony Stark focused, I'm not arguing that. Yes, the movie is still majority-wise Tony Stark focused. I'm not going to argue that. That's just the nature of the beast when you have someone take off in such popularity. What I'm saying is Whedon did a better job in the second Avengers of spreading out the major players and making sure it was more than just focused on Tony Stark. Tony Stark is the one making most of the big decisions in that first Avengers, where it is more spread out and more of a group thing within the second Avengers, even down to the fact that it's not just Tony Stark that creates Ultron and Vision, it's Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. Both are there, both play an equal part in that creation. Also, moving on to Spider-Man, because I didn't really get a chance to talk about any of the characters in that movie. I'm sorry, maybe it's just me, but the 2002 Spider-Man movie comes off as extremely dated and extremely corny now. Tobey Maguire is playing your basic 2002 geek, and he doesn't really fit into the Spider-Man character that well. The way they play that character at the start, I can't see him building in to the Spider-Man that he is at the end. Mary Jane is a bland character. She's kind of bland in the comics, so I can see why it translates over, but she's very bland. You didn't mention James Franco. He's iffy in that first film as well, and I'm sorry. Again, maybe it's just me, maybe it's just my sensibilities, but Willem Dafoe overacts the shit out of this movie. Willem Dafoe, yes, he's good in the grounded scenes, but when you have him go crazy, it's not a natural progression of crazy. It's from 0 to 100 in a second, and I'm sorry, but it gives off the same type of vibe that Jamie Foxx gave off as Electro in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's going from 1 level to 10 levels up for absolutely no reason, and it's extreme. It's too extreme for me to enjoy the movie. He affects it in a negative way. And again, I don't want to harp on technicality, but Spider-Man is not a proper ensemble. Spider-Man is the clear lead. Harry and Mary Jane and Norman are the clear supporting characters, and the ending tag of your ensemble are all background characters that share about 5 scenes between the 10 of them. My movie is a legit ensemble. When you look at, yes, okay, Iron Man would get top billing, but underneath that, you have Chris Evans as Captain America, Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye, Aaron Taylor-Johnson as Quicksilver, Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch, James Spader as Ultron, you have Paul Bettany as Vision, and for the most part, you can take that group and interchange and chop them in and out and put them in any order you like, and they all fall under the same importance. That is a true ensemble. They all have a part to play. Avengers is an ensemble film. Spider-Man is a Spider-Man film.
All right, that was a strong closing. The answer of Spider-Man was accepted, so the point of it just not being an ensemble film holds a little bit less water, but it's still a good point about how there were support, not necessarily, it was more supporting and leading, but I did still accept the answer, so we are going to stick with that.
Trust me, I've been in your position.
I really like the first Spider-Man.
That was really tough. Man, I think I'm gonna lean. So I think Aaron spent a lot of the open forum period talking about why he chose Ultron over the first Avengers, instead of hitting specifically at Spider-Man in the open forum. He did in the closing argument, but I think I needed to hear more of those points in the open forum, so I'm going to slightly, by that much, I'm going to lean towards Jake. I need a little bit more in the open forum against Spider-Man, not just in the closing argument. So okay. I'm going to lean towards Jake just a little bit on that one. Tied up at 1-1.
As somebody who's been in your position, I'm not going to argue the fact that Jake did a great job there, and he did get me on some important points, and he deserves the point. I want to be fair, though.
Thank you.
The only reason I compared it to the first Avengers so much is because Jake started out his open forum by saying I should have chosen the first Avengers over and explaining why.
Yeah, I just think you hung on that point. I just think you hung on that point a little bit too much instead of just saying, no, I picked this one, let's talk more about this one over yours instead of over this one over here that's we're not talking about. So still fair points on both your sides, but I'm leaning just a little bit towards Jake on that one.
Yay, I'm on the board.
There we go, all tied up at 1-1.
I can just finish now and I'll be happy. I got a point. That's all I need.
All right. So question 3, let me pull up my questions to make sure I have them in the right order. All right, this is one that I think this is going to be the biggest fight of the night, but we will see. This question tonight, we're going to start with Aaron as we ask, What is the best year in film of the 2010s so far? What is the best year in film of the 2010s? Aaron, we're going to start off with you.
The best year in the 2010s is 2014, simply because if you look at all the major genres, this year had movies firing on all cylinders. You had top-tier movies in every single genre. If you want to look at your action blockbusters, you have movies like Captain America: The Winter Soldier, you have Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and you have one of Tom Cruise's best movies in Edge of Tomorrow. If you want to look at comedies, you have movies like Neighbors and 22 Jump Street that came out. If you want to look at animated movies, you have How to Train Your Dragon, you have Big Hero 6, and you have one of the best animated movies of all time in the Lego Movie. And if you want to look at serious dramas, you have Nightcrawler, you have Gone Girl, you have Whiplash, you have even smaller movies like Chef. Fury was something that I loved from that year. Even stuff like Winter Soldier and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes would cross over into that genre. But most of all, you have what I believe is the best movie in the 2010s, Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, which is one of the best dramas in the 2010s. In my opinion, it's one of the best movies made of all time. And it's just a year in which you have some of the most top-tier movies in every single category. There's no weak category.
All right, coming out of the gate swinging, and I wouldn't expect any less. This is a passion-filled argument. Let's head over to Jake to hear his answer.
I hate you. So I went with 2010, and I mainly went with 2010 because if you just look at the films released in 2010, let me just list them all up because I can. Inception, Christopher Nolan. Black Swan, Darren Aronofsky. Social Network, David Fincher. 127 Hours, Danny Boyle. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Edgar Wright. King's Speech, Tom Hooper. True Grit, The Coen Brothers. The Fighter, David O. Russell. Shutter Island, Martin Scorsese. Ensign D's, Denis Villeneuve. Beautiful, Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. Animal Kingdom. The Town, Ben Affleck. Never Let Me Go. The Ghost Rider, Roman Polanski. All of these films are from great auteur directors. Directors that we all love, that we all cherish. We love our Scorseses, we love our Inarritus, we love our Danny Boyles, we love our Finchers, we love our Darren Aronofskys, and most importantly, we love our Nolans. Those are directors who made all of those films in 2010. I think that's a reason why 2010 is the best year, because it's the year of the directors, the year of the auteurs. Those are directors that we love, and we get to see them make their films, and it all came out in that one year.
Alrighty, you guys are definitely coming at this from two different angles, and I like that you're not just listing, oh, these movies are better than these movies. You're really coming at it from different angles. I like that. Let's keep it up in the 5-minute open forum, starting now.
Okay, I think the issue with 2010 over 2014 is the simple matter of fact of when we're talking about best year, we have to talk about broad appeal, and we have to talk about spread over genres. Most of those movies you listed all fall under the Oscar Beatty type category, but with the exception, the only one I can think of that was really a blockbuster in there was Inception, which is a good blockbuster type film. But other than that, you're talking about the year of the auteurs. But the problem is, how far of a reach does the year of the auteurs have? If we sat down Black Swan and put it up against something along the lines of Winter Soldier, which one is going to have a further reach? And I know they're two very different films, but that's what I'm trying to say, is that 2010 does not have, from the movies you listed, 2010 does not have as broad a reach as 2014 had.
Okay, well, I would say that you mentioned Neighbors. You mentioned Neighbors as a good film from 2014. Really? I mean, a Seth Rogen comedy? It's not funny. I saw that with my mom, and I remember coming out of it thinking, oh my God, what did I watch? There's nothing to that. Okay, comedy is subjective, but I think that when you look at a comedy like, I don't know, the 22 Jump Street, okay, that's more of a decent film. But I mean, Neighbors, I don't know. A lot of penis jokes and a lot of sex jokes. And it's not personally not my thing, but I don't know. Would I really call that a comedy on the level of Scott Pilgrim versus the World? I really don't think so.
And that's fair to obviously, like, comedy is a subjective genre. Everybody's sensibilities to comedy are different. I personally enjoyed Neighbors more for the story that they were going for, as well as some of the crude humor work. I'll admit with that one specifically, some of the crude humor went overboard. But if you're going to talk about comedy, 22 Jump Street is one of the best comedies to come out in the last couple of years. It is a sequel to a very smart parody film, and it gets even smarter in this one. Plus, let's move on to other genres that you didn't mention. Again, you didn't really mention anything except Inception in the kind of action-adventure genre. I have The Winter Soldier, which in my opinion is by far the best MCU movie, and it is one of the smartest action films out there. They literally made the film make it honest trailer-proof. That's how you know they were trying to go for a smart action film. You have movies like Fury, which is a great action movie. You have Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. You have Edge of Tomorrow. You have X-Men Days of Future Past. You have Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy came out in 2014, and that movie completely changed the face of comic book movies and comedies. It put Chris Pratt on the map. It blew up the careers of everyone involved. 2010 doesn't have anything like that. It doesn't have that big hit, that big, like, this will landmark this year. 2014 has movie after movie after movie that does that.
When you mentioned Chris Pratt, I mean, Parks and Rec put Chris Pratt on the map, not Guardians. And before then was the Lego Movie, which also had Chris Pratt in it as the lead. So I think that argument's completely destroyed. X-Men Days of Future Past, I mean, are you going to mention the continuity errors with that film? I mean, Wolverine has his metal claws again after the post-credit scene of the Wolverine where he has bone. I mean, the continuity of that film is screwed. Let me just mention the bad films from 2014, because I find it very interesting that you say that 2014 had a lot of good movies, but I think it also had a lot of bad movies. 2014 had Transcendence, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Transformers Age of Extinction, The Other Woman, Tusk, Blended, Winter's Tale, Men, Women and Children, A Million Ways to Die in the West, Sex Tape, The Nut Job, A Haunted House, Dumb and Dumber 2, Tammy, Deliver Us from Evil, Ride Along, and my favorite, the Nicolas Cage film Left Behind, which has full of religious and Christianity and just says that if you don't believe in God, you're a bad person. I don't think that's what I would call the best year in the 2010s. If you look at 2010, there may be a lot of good movies. There's a lot of good movies, but there's not a lot of bad movies that are on the same level as the good movies. 2014 had a lot of good movies, but it also had a lot of bad movies, and I think that's why it kind of equals itself out. With 2010, there's a lot of good movies more than there is a lot of bad movies. And also 2020 had a lot of prestigious, intelligent films that were loved by a lot of people. And I want to say that Fury, directed by David Ayer, who directed Suicide Squad and that new Netflix film, Bright. I don't know. Fury, I don't think is that level of great film. Maybe the editing and the sound design was good, but
and time there. So Aaron, we're gonna go to you first for closing art. You started this one, right?
Yes.
All right, so then we're going to go to you to close up with your closing arguments. Once again, this one is really, really close. You guys are both great fighters, so let's see how you guys can wrap it up.
Okay, 2014 is the best year in the 2014s because it has the most wide-reaching group of films. And also, you want to talk about bad films in 2010? Here we go. I can do the same thing you did. I have pulled up a list of nominees for the Razzies. Let's run through this. Hey, guess what? The Last Airbender, which we just voted as the worst M. Night Shyamalan film, came out in 2010. We also have the Jennifer Aniston classic, The Bounty Hunter, Sex and the City 2, Twilight Saga Eclipse, It's Even Worse ripoff, Vampires Suck. We have Gulliver's Travels. We have Remember Me. We have The Switch. We have The Last Song, a Nicholas Sparks movie, for Christ's sake. We have Jonah Hex. We have, what else? We have Marmaduke. Marmaduke came out in 2010.
Lee Pace.
You have Grown Ups. Defend Grown Ups. You talk about bad, crude humor. Grown Ups is a personification of that. You had Little Fockers come out in the 2010. You had Burlesque come out in 2010. You have, what else is here? You have Clash of the Titans that came out in 2010. You have the Cats and Dogs sequel came out in 2010. Like, seriously, you're going to talk shit about my bad movies? Did you hear that list of movies? That is insane. Those are terrible, terrible movies. And also, 2010 had a great list of movies in a very broad scope. all the movies you listed were nominated for Oscars, yes. And were all the movies that I listed nominated for Oscars, no. But everybody knows that the Oscars is a very broad scope of movies that they nominate, and all your movies fall in it. My movies are a broad range. I have 2 of the best MCU films. I have 1 of the best X-Men films, and you did not say one bad thing about Days of Future Past. You just nitpick continuity, which we all know X-Men doesn't give a fuck about. And you also, I have the Lego Movie, which, yes, first off, to say that Parks and Rec, saying Chris Pratt as the fat guy on Parks and Rec is the same as Guardians of the Galaxy is insane. Guardians of the Galaxy put him on the map and made him more than the fat guy from Parks and Rec. Second off, I have the Lego Movie, which he was in as well. Have you ever seen a movie have such a fervent fan base behind it that people got mad when it wasn't even nominated? We're not talking about losing an Oscar.
Yes.
This movie, they had such a bad reaction when this wasn't nominated. You can literally go back and watch the video and hear a gasp in the room when they finish up the best animated category and there's no Lego Movie announced. 2014 had a broad reach of brilliant films, and that's why it's the best year of the 2010s, because you can take any genre and pull out a brilliant film from it within 2014. 2010 is not the case.
All right, a strong closing from Aaron. Let's see what Jake has to offer for his closing argument as he wraps up 2010.
You mentioned that 2010 had Grown Ups. 2014 had Blended, which was another Adam Sandler film. So we're both equal on that level. They're both terrible. They're both terrible. Doesn't matter. Both Adam Sandler films. All Adam Sandler suck since Punch Drunk Love. Doesn't matter. They both suck. Genre means nothing when it comes to the quality of films. You say that 2014 was very, very sparse. It was all over the place with good thrillers, good horrors, good action, good comedies. Doesn't matter what the genre is. If the film's good, then that's all that needs to be. You also mentioned that Chris Pratt was doing something different and something that was not even the same as Parks and Rec. He's the funny man. He's the funny man in Parks and Rec. He's the funny man in the Lego Movie. And, of course, he's the funny man in Guardians Volume 1. I don't think that 2014 is on the level of 2010 because 2010 had a lot of good movies, just a little less than 2014 had, with a lot of good movies and a lot of bad movies. If you look at the level of badness, 2014 had more than 2010.
All right, that was a very nice closing from Jake. This is close. You guys definitely both brought a different argument to this fight, a different angle. Aaron was definitely focusing more on the broad reach, the box office, the different genres, being able to pull that out. I think personally, you guys both listed a lot of good movies. You guys both listed a lot of bad movies. For me personally, the bads all canceled out. Some of the greats all canceled out. So what it came down to for me was the argument behind the lists of movies. And I think that just by a hair, I think Aaron pulled that out. I think his argument for the broad reach and genres was just a little bit better. I loved the whole that it was auteur directors. I thought that was a very, very interesting argument to take it for 2010. The prestigious, intelligent films. I thought that's very, very true of 2010. But I think the reach of 2014 was just a little bit too much. So I'm going to give that point to Aaron.
I would be upset if I won because I went 2014 and I was just a little too slow. Because I should mention that Birdman is my favorite film of all time. So
when Aaron brought that up when Aaron brought that up in his opening, I'm like, oh, Aaron, you dick.
Yeah, no, dick move. But
I have to clarify at the end with the Chris Pratt thing. I wasn't trying to argue that Chris Pratt is doing anything different because he's absolutely not. I was just trying to say that this was the biggest he's done it. No, trust me, I understand. He is doing the exact same thing in every movie.
Yeah, I can't argue against 2014. I tried my best, I think, but no,
you did a really good job.
There was a strong argument there. You didn't give up. You didn't give up, and you definitely. I think that closing was the best one you had out of the 3 so far.
Oh, good, because I pulled that out of my ass.
It worked. All right, on to question 4.
Also, I just have to ask. I have to ask because I didn't hear it. Did you mention Annie on the bad list of 2014?
No,
that was pretty bad.
Shy.
I'm also glad he didn't mention Hobbit because I would have fought him.
No, I think they're fine.
Yeah, you do. Damn right you do.
Actually, yeah.
All right, we're going to go into question 4 here. Jake, you're going to start this one off. This is the final main round question. We'll get into we're going to have at least one speed round question depending on the results of this round. But in question 4, Jake's going to open as we ask, what is the worst third movie in a trilogy? There are lots of bad trilogies, lots of bad final installments. Some changes were made to arguments, but
This will be fun.
Jake, take us away.
This is hard because first you have to find a trilogy, and then you have to find a bad movie that completed that trilogy. And well, my original choice was going to be Spider-Man 3. I just thought to myself, there's a lot of good moments in Spider-Man 3. So I just thought, well, let's see if I can change my argument because I found a better one. And luckily I did. And I'm going with the action Marvel vampire film that is Blade Trinity. When you think of bad trilogy closing films, I think Blade Trinity is one that should be mentioned more often because nobody on that film cared. No one cared about that film. The only person who cares is Ryan Reynolds, and that's mostly in the comedy. And the comedy is a hit and miss. It's a 20/80. Sometimes he'll get it right. Most of the time he'll get it wrong. If you look at Wesley Snipes in the film, he does not look like he cares. He looks like he'd rather be in his trailer than make the movie. And if you read behind the scenes, he did not like making this film. He wanted it to be done. He didn't give a shit. He phoned it in. He did not care. David S. Goyer, who directed it, has written films like Man of Steel, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, and my favorite, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. This was his directorial debut. You don't really think about that, but David S. Goyer was a shit director. He did not care about making this film. He wrote the first 2 Blade films, although the first one was brilliantly directed by Stephen Norrington, and the second one, my favorite of the trilogy, was directed by Guillermo del Toro. I think that is more of a classic 2 films than Blade Trinity. It completely got rid of most of the characters. Can I spoil what happens in Trinity?
Yeah.
I mean, this movie came out a while ago, so yeah.
Okay, cool. Whistler dies. The character played by Chris Christopherson dies about 10, 20 minutes into the film. He's the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the film, and I'm not saying that because Obi-Wan Kenobi dies in A New Hope, but he's there to help the character. He's the only friend that Blade has. Characters from the first film never appear other than Blade. Characters from the second film, none of them appear other than Blade. That's why I think Blade Trinity is just the worst film, because it brings Dracula into this. You know when a film is bad when Dracula gets into the film, because it's like, oh, well, what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to need a vampire for Blade to fight. Oh, let's get the most classic vampire of all time. Let's get Dracula, and let's make it, he was the first one. He was into sorcery and all that crap. And just terrible. Terribly edited, visual effects terrible. It was on an $85 million budget, and it looks like it was shot for $10 million.
Very strong, somewhat unorthodox pick from Jake there, but definitely has the argument to support it. Let's hop on over to Aaron. Opening arguments. Go for it.
All right. For my pick, again, taking a bit of a different angle on this one, I am going with the Divergent series Allegiant because, yes, and I know Jake's going to jump on this technicality of the fact that there was supposed to be a 4th one. But that is my point. This franchise is over. This franchise is over and will forever be a trilogy. Why? Because this movie was so bad. How many franchises can you say have ended, canceled on a 3rd film? Most of these franchises, by the time they get to the 3rd film, have either picked their ending and set it to be a trilogy, or they already have the go-ahead to expand on and do more. It's very rare that you see a 3rd movie in a franchise do so poorly that it ends like this. Nobody cares. And I mean literally, nobody cares. That comes off so evident in the directing, the writing, the acting. You have Academy-level actors in this movie who just couldn't care less. Miles Teller gives the best performance in this movie simply because it's so evident he doesn't care that it's funny to watch. Like, that's how bad it is. It is the best movie of the trilogy, in my opinion, because it's so bad, it's funny. It's the first one that's entertaining because it's that bad. It ended the franchise. This movie was weeks from production on a fourth one, and it did so awfully and tanked so hard that not only did they can it, but they're struggling to get a series on fucking like Freeform or some shit off the ground for this franchise. Even Mortal Instruments could get a series on Freeform, and this movie did so bad that it can't get that treatment. That's how bad this movie is.
All right. Great picks. I'm just jotting down a few notes. All right. Great pick. Definitely not the first two you would immediately come to mind and think of, but definitely two stinkers. So you guys have 5 minutes to fight it out. Let's hear your arguments.
Okay,
all right, so that's me, right?
I mean,
whoever
either
wants
way,
to talk
everyone
and
can
talk.
start.
It's open
I mean, I
forum.
went first.
I'll restart the clock.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. So you said that what other films destroyed their franchise of having a sequel? And I want to mention Amazing Spider-Man 2. And maybe not, it's probably not it's not the third one in the series, but they planned that whole film to set up the Sinister Six. They set up Amazing Spider-Man 3. We were going to see the ending with Spider-Man and Rhino, and that never happened. And we were anticipating the fact that, they're going to make Spider-Man 3. They're going to have the Sinister Six involved. And guess what? That film sucked. That was one of my most hated films of all time. Came out in 2014, by the way. And it was so bad that Sony had to sell the rights back to Marvel so they could make Civil War as a joint thing, and then Homecoming, of course, which is pretty good. Also, Mortal Instruments, you mentioned that. That was the first one, and then they're going to make another one, and they're going to make another one after that. But they only made one. They made one. Your film made 3 in the series. They were going to make a 4th one, but they didn't because the 3rd one sucked. But I still think it had good visual effects. It was nicely shot, and it was nicely edited. And you mentioned it yourself. It's not. You said it's the worst in the series. The worst in the series? Why? You said it was You said it was the best in the series. The best in the series, and you're saying it's the worst of the trilogy. I think Divergent is a fine film. I think the sequel, Insurgent, is a little better because it's dealing with better themes that's going on, and Naomi Watts is in it. But to mention that, the film had some great actors, some great Academy Award-winning actors. You have Shailene Woodley, Naomi Watts, Jeff Daniels, Miles Teller, Octavia Spencer, Ansel Elgort, and Zoe Kravitz, and they're giving it all. They're trying. You can see they're trying. They're giving it their best. They're giving it their best. They're trying. You can't say that about Wesley Snipes. You can't say that about Chris Christopherson. You can't say that about Jessica Biel or the guy that played Dracula. You can't, because they don't care at this point. There was so much shit that was going on of that film. They were just making a film because they were ripping off Twilight. They were just doing exactly what they thought. We'll split the last book in half and we'll make more money, and we'll make the first one and it'll be a pretty good film, and then the second one, it's not a trilogy. You might say it ended, but it's not a trilogy because it's half of a film. If you say because originally my argument was going to be Spider-Man 3, to say that is not a trilogy because Spider-Man 4 was going to be made, that trilogy ended it with Harry dying. They set it up in the first one, they continued until the 3rd film, and they closed it. It was closure. Spider-Man 4 was going to be a new trilogy. It was going to be very similar to like Star Wars and how they'll have the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy, etc. Allegiant finished on a cliffhanger. The ending was a cliffhanger because they wanted to set it up. You can't really say that's a trilogy because they left so much things open-ended because they wanted to close it in the 4th film because that was going to be the ending. That's not a trilogy. I don't think that works, and I think that's why I think Blade Trinity is a worse film if we're talking about a trilogy than Allegiant.
Okay, so to counteract some of your points, talking about the actors, yes, you have a lot of really good actors in Divergent Allegiant, but it doesn't matter how many great actors you have in a movie. If they're not trying and they're not giving good performances, I don't care how many actors you have. You could have Daniel freaking Day-Lewis as the star of this movie, but if he's trying as hard as these actors are, then it doesn't matter because it's not going to be good. Just because you put in good performances previously and you have put together a good cast, if they're not trying and they don't care, it doesn't mean that you can forgive it just because it's a good cast. Also, You brought up movies like Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Mortal Instruments. You are exactly building into my point. How many franchises are canceled on a third film? Amazing Spider-Man 2 got to the second one and fucked up, and they ended it. Mortal Instruments bombed horrifically, and they canceled it after the first one. By the time you get to the third movie, you were either ending it of your own choice because you have a trilogy of stories, or because you have a trilogy story, or you have already done successfully enough to book your ticket into the rest of the franchise by that point. This movie had that ticket booked, and it tanked so fucking hard that they canceled it weeks from production. Also, Blade Trinity, yes, it was marred by production issues, but this Divergent didn't have production issues to tear it down. It was just an awful, awful film. And also, Blade Trinity had an unexperienced director in David S. Goyer. When you put a first-time, history shows, when you put a first-time director on franchises like that, it doesn't always end well. You have a director like Robert, I believe the name is pronounced Schwenke. It's German, so forgive me if I mispronounce that. Okay, yeah. See, I wouldn't know. But he's not a first-time director. He's directed movies. He directed Insurgent. He directed Red. He directed The Time Traveler's Wife. Yeah, they're not the best movies in the world, but he has experience in directing. And this movie wasn't marred by production issue after production issue like Blade Trinity was.
Gonna have to stop you there. Jake, just hold that thought, Aaron. Write it down if you need to remember it. But we're gonna hop over to Jake for closing arguments, and we're gonna wrap this up. Once again, this one is really close. You guys are neither of you are giving an inch. So, Jake, go ahead and wrap it up.
So, you said David S. Goyer was an inexperienced director. This guy wrote Blade, and he wrote Blade 2. He's experienced in the previous films. He should know what needs to be done, and yet he still directed and wrote Blade Trinity and took nothing in consideration with the continuity, with the canon, with the world of the previous Blade films, and decided to just do something that was completely offhand and not faithful to the previous two films. Also, Allegiant, it's forgettable. It's not bad enough to be the absolute worst. You mentioned it was the best in the series, which I don't think is right to be considered the worst in a trilogy. It's just a forgettable movie. You forget it and you just move on with your life. Blade Trinity is painful. It's absolutely painful. You see characters die that you root for the previous films. You see Whistler die. You see the humans find out that vampires coexist and they're wiping them out. They're completely doing everything to set it up for another thing. It just doesn't work because Wesley Snipes would rather be anywhere else than making this movie. He doesn't care. David S. Goyer should have been more confident making the film. He should have been more aware of the problems. He should have known what he needed to do. Allegiant had nice visual effects. They're decent. It's a fine film. It's passable. You could just forget about it. Blade Trinity is painful to watch. When you watch it, you die inside because you know that everyone working on this film is thinking to themselves, oh, this is what we're doing with our lives. This is not even worth it. We should just move on and do something else. That's why I think that Blade Trinity does not work as a film, because it destroys everything that it's set up in the previous two Blade films to do something that is largely generic and bland. And that is why it is the worst in a trilogy.
All right, a solid closing over to Aaron. I'm sorry I cut you off in the forum, but we were out of time, so go ahead and wrap up your points here.
Again, as someone who's judged, that's completely fair. To address your point of me saying that it was the best of the trilogy, I said it was the best of the trilogy in the context of it's so bad that you enjoy it more than the other two. Also, again, semantics, but the question is, what is the worst third film in a trilogy? I am saying it is the worst third film in a trilogy. That does not necessarily mean it has to be the worst but of the trilogy itself, but the other two would not qualify as they are not the third film in a trilogy. It's semantics, but I have to argue it if you're going to bring up that point. Also, the third Blade film had a reason to be bad. You have an inexperienced director in David S. Goyer. Now, I understand that he wrote the first two films, and if you want to talk about continuity fuck-ups, he wrote the screenplay himself. That's on the writing end. But writing a screenplay and directing actors on a set and directing shots and doing all that are two completely different things. It doesn't matter if you have context within that universe. It is a completely different thing to be on set day to day, dealing with actors, dealing with sets, dealing with shots, and having to put all that together and make a good movie. And the fact of the matter is, it didn't work. He didn't do it. And he hasn't directed a good film since. So it proves that he's not a good director. It's just he was put on a big budget film to start, and it was clear. Also, you had Wesley Snipes, who was problematic and caused issues on set. This movie had reason to be bad. Nothing stood out about the Divergent series Allegiance production that gave it reason to be bad. It's just simply a director who isn't good, directing a script that's not well written, directing actors who couldn't care less. It's not a matter of there's some overbearing production issue that hampers down on the movie. It's just nobody gave a fuck. Everybody turned up to set for 60 days and nobody gave a shit once. And it turns it into a bad, laughable movie. At least Blade Trinity has a decent performance from Chris Christopherson as Whistler. It has Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds has done a shit ton of movies, but he's still famous and popular because we like him in every movie he's in. Yeah, is he the same character, a la a Chris Pratt type? Yeah, but he's likable and he's funny and he does what he needs to do. Divergent Allegiant does not have that. And it's back to the point of you don't see movies canceled on a third film. A trilogy, technically speaking, is 3 films. That is a trilogy. If we can count 2, 3, and 4 of Star Trek, a 6-film series, as its own separate trilogy, then having 1, 2, 3 of Divergent counts as a trilogy. And the fact of the matter is, there was more to this story, and it was so bad it got canned. And also, I'm sorry, the visual effects are not good in that movie. They are poorly done. And if you want to talk about budget to correct from the start, you said $85 million. Blade Trinity cost $65 million. Meanwhile, Divergent series looks at the same or worse, and they had $142 million to put that film together, and it still looks like shit.
Whew. All right. Wow. Just give me 1 second. There was a lot to write down on that one. As far as the semantics argument, I will say both arguments, or both movies were accepted. So as far as not being a trilogy versus being the best in a trilogy doesn't qualify it. Those arguments I'm kind of throwing out on both your ends because both of you guys made them and counteracted them with each other. So I'm going to take those arguments out just because both answers were accepted. Man, I think there was one point that really, really hit home for me. I think both of you guys counteracted each other very, 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 very well in both your closing arguments and in the open forum. But the biggest point was one that Aaron made, that he said Allegiant didn't have a reason to be bad when it comes to production issues. Yes, the director should have known better from being a writer. Yes, he should have known what was going on, but Wesley Snipes was difficult on set. I think Blade Trinity, the point that Aaron made, that Blade Trinity had an excuse to be as bad as it was, whereas Allegiant didn't. I have to just so slightly lean Aaron again on this one, but great fight by both of you. We are not done yet. Aaron is going to go up. No. Aaron's going to go up 3-1 as we go into the first round of the speed round. What has to happen here?
Great fights, man. Great fights.
Yeah. Seriously,
that was real good. I absolutely agree.
I'm probably going to get a little bit of
I have to say now that I have the point, I've never seen a Blade movie, so that was hard.
Okay, interesting, because I've never seen Allegiant. When you changed it from X-Men Apocalypse to Allegiant, I was like, I'm screwed. Because Allegiant is.
I've never seen a Blade movie. I can't tell you how Chris Christopherson does in that movie. I was just
Yeah, he's in it for 5 minutes.
It worked. Cool. So right now Aaron is leading 3-1. Basically, if he hits 4 points, he'll win. So we're gonna have at least one speed round question. Jake, if you sweep the board here, you'll come back and win. I'm not 100% sure if it's ever been done before, but you're the first. If that does happen,
that's a not in my favor then.
Aaron probably knows that better than I do. Has that ever happened?
Not that I can think of. We've had a couple instances where somebody, like the down player has gotten 2, but the person who's up pulled it out at the end. But I don't.
Then I'll make history if I do.
Exactly. There's definitely been comebacks before.
Hey, I'm open to it.
Don't count yourself out yet.
I'm going to give it my best. Sorry.
The way this is going to work, I'm going to name a question. It's either going to be open-ended or choose one or the other. The first person to answer is going to get to argue first. You're going to have 30 seconds to argue, 30 seconds to the other person, and then 15 and 15. I'm not sure if those are the official rules, but that's the ones I'm going with because that's what I did for the last match. So it gives you a little bit more time to think. Make sure you take
better than what I was doing.
Huh?
That sounds more fair than what I was doing, so sure.
Yeah. So that's what I'm
I'll
gonna
run
do.
with that from now on.
I'm gonna go 30-30, 15-15. That's what I did for Mark and Chris, and it seemed to work pretty well. So 30 seconds, then 30 seconds. You're gonna be able to take your time to answer. So this first speedrun question is an either or. I'm gonna name 2 films and pick whichever one you think. I'm gonna try to listen very closely to see who shouts first. So I need you guys to answer me, which Disney remake was better? The Jungle Book or The Beauty and the Beast?
Jungle Book.
Jungle Book.
I heard Jake on Jungle Book first. So Aaron, I'm gonna have you argue Beauty and the Beast. Jake, you answered first, so you're going to have 30 seconds. Let me get the clock ready quickly. All right, you have 30 seconds. Whenever you're ready, Jake, go ahead.
The Jungle Book was directed by Jon Favreau, who has proven in the past to make brilliant, great films with great stories. That's what The Jungle Book is. Not only is the script faithful to the original book, but also improves on the original story by actually having Mowgli become what he is supposed to be, and that is a man cub. He's supposed to be just what he is. He keeps being turned into a cub because that's what he is supposed to be, a wolf. But he actually learns throughout the film that it's better to be who he is than what everyone keeps telling him also to be. Also, the cast of casting
and time
Christopher
right there.
Walken.
Time right there. You can come back to the cast on your next 15 seconds. Good first 30. Aaron, for Beauty and the Beast, whenever you're ready, the clock starts.
The original 1991 Beauty and the Beast animated film was the first ever animated film to be nominated for Best Picture, which means going into remaking, you're going to have a hard time making a film that's up to snuff. The Jungle Book original film was an average film, so it makes sense as to why the remake could be better. The remake of Beauty and the Beast adds context and layers to the original film, and it makes a movie that is just as good, if not better, than the original. The cast in it all give good performances that both put their own spin on the character as well as remaining faithful to the original, and the new songs that are added fit in with the re-renditions of the originals, and it makes it feel like they've always been there from the start. They don't stand out as weird or different.
Time. I gave you accidentally a little bit of extra time, so I'm going to give that same extra time to Jake on his second round. Jake, whenever you're ready, clock will start.
You talk about brilliant casting. You look at Bill Murray, you look at Scarlett Johansson, you look at Ben Kingsley. You look at these actors, and they just fit the role. Bill Murray as Baloo, one of the brilliant casting decisions I've ever seen. Christopher Walken as King Louie, brilliant. The Jungle Book won an Oscar for its visual effects because it's photorealistic and he knew what he was doing, Jon Favreau. Beauty and the Beast is a retread of the original. They even got the same composer, Alan Menken, to do both films. It is a complete
time there. Just writing down that last point. All right, Aaron, 15 seconds. Clock will start when you start talking.
The original Beauty and the Beast is known for its score and music, so bringing back Alan Menken is not a diss against the movie. It's actually a positive towards it. And you're talking about the cast of the Jungle Book. It's just actors putting their voices. It's just celebrities playing these characters, and it takes you out of the movie. The Beauty and the Beast movie does not have its...
Oh my gosh, how do
I wish I mentioned Ewan McGregor and all those actors and Magneto as celebrities in Beauty and the Beast, because that would have counterpointed your argument, but yeah.
Oh man.
I was going somewhere with that, but the time cut me off.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I know.
I would have counterpointed that because, yeah.
30-20 might be a better way to go on that, but I'm not 100% sure. Trial and error, mostly error.
That's fine. That's good.
It works.
You gotta make it quick.
Oh man. Oh, I really don't know where to go on this one.
Just go with your heart. It's okay.
I think I'm going to go just, again, by the skin of the teeth. I think I have to go Jake here. He went a little bit more into specifics on how, like, not just saying that it does improve upon the original, but specifically how the story, the script's more faithful to the book. Brilliant casting decisions. He listed the casting a little bit more specifically than Aaron did. Aaron, obviously, a great cast in Beauty and the Beast, but I think Jake was just a little bit more specific than Aaron was on that one. But honestly, that one
easily was 100% correct. So
that one easily could have gone either way. But
No, that was a really good argument, Aaron.
Great
That was
fight.
really good.
Great fight
I got
there.
nervous there.
Alrighty. So, Aaron is up 3-2. This is still make or break for Jake as we go into the second speed round question. And this one I'm a little bit nervous for, but here we go.
Oh, God.
This one's open-ended, so you guys take your time, really think out your argument. I'm going to ask a question, say an answer. For what performance should Leonardo DiCaprio have won his Oscar?
The Aviator.
The Wolf of Wall Street.
Arguably the two best. Two of the others he was nominated for, Aviator and Wolf of Wall Street. Jake, you spoke first, so once you start talking, the clock will start. 30 seconds when you're ready.
Leonardo DiCaprio already gave a great performance in Gangs of New York, and Martin Scorsese saw what he could do, what the potential he did. So that's why he cast him in The Aviator. He played Howard Hughes, a real-life character, and you can see from the twitches, the mannerisms, he's really trying to play the character, the way of the future, at the end of the film. Absolutely, completely emotional. You see he became the character. He actually went into some method acting. He was peeing into jars. He was doing everything that Howard Hughes does. He was completely crazy. He grew a beard, he lost weight, he did exactly what everything that Howard Hughes did. That's why it was an absolutely brilliant performance.
All right, got a couple last words in there. I'll give Aaron just a few more seconds like I did with you. Hold up as I write furiously down in my chicken scratch. All right. Aaron, for the Wolf of Wall Street, when you begin speaking.
The crazy eccentrics that he shows in The Aviator is just a precursor to what he had to do in The Wolf of Wall Street. The Wolf of Wall Street is a drama/comedy, and Leonardo DiCaprio brings both those elements in his A-game form to this performance. Also, there's a lot of physical acting that goes with The Wolf of Wall Street, specifically with the Quaalude scene. The fact to pull that off and pull it off so effectively shows that you have what it takes to win the Oscar. It is the best of his career. It's one of the hardest performances I imagine someone would have to put in, and he balances drama and comedy elements and works off the entire cast perfectly.
Are these both Scorsese films? I just realized that.
Yeah.
All right. Jake, we're going to go 15 seconds when you begin speaking.
You said it's a retread. You said that it was just setting it up for the Wolf of Wall Street. Wolf of Wall Street is just a retread of Goodfellas, Raging Bull, the Rise and Fall story. We've seen this done, and it was done by Scorsese. All he does in Wolf of Wall Street, he screams and shouts. He just wants to just go, fuck yeah. He just wants to scream. He just wants to get everyone crazy and hectic. It was done in The Aviator first. It's what set it up for him in the Wolf of Wall Street. The Aviator, he absolutely brilliantly captivates and becomes the character of Howard Hughes.
Oh, geez, I went way over time there because I was too enthralled by your argument and writing down.
Oh, thank you.
So we're going to give Aaron 25 seconds instead of 15. My bad. Aaron, 25 seconds when you're ready.
Didn't feel like 25 seconds.
It was. Time goes by quickly. I know.
Yes.
His performance in The Wolf of Wall Street is more than just screaming and yelling. His performance in The Wolf of Wall Street is of a guy who's doing terrible, awful things, and he has to convince himself and convince the others around him that what he's doing is right and correct and great for all of them, and he successfully does that. He makes you care about a fucking shitty, terrible person. Also, this movie has an extreme 3-hour runtime, and Leonardo DiCaprio's performance causes you to not lose interest or wane on the movie, no matter the movie.
Time, right there.
Avia had a similar length, but I can't make that as my argument. Just wanted to point that out. They're both long films.
Yeah, well, Scorsese makes long movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that runtime really didn't hold a whole lot of water for me, but Jake was going into the method acting and how it was a brilliant performance, how he really got into the head of the character. Aaron was talking more about the physicality and how he was able to convince the audience to really engage with the character, this terrible character, balancing the drama and the comedy. I think I'm gonna lean just a little bit on Aaron this time, as he talks about the drama and the comedy and the physicality. Yes, I think Aviator was a brilliant performance by DiCaprio, really emotional character. But I think the point of just making the audience care so much for such a shitbag, like that last argument was just the one final dart that I think landed just right. But once again, well fought by Jake. I'm going to give this one to Aaron, 4-2. Definitely not a knockout, not blown out of the water by any means. We'll start with Jake. What did you think of this whole format, the questions? What did you think of your competitor?
This was absolutely fun. I would love to do this again whenever the chance comes up. Yeah, definitely call me and I'll be there. Aaron, congratulations. Seriously, good job. I wish I could argue for 2014 because that would have been. Well, I think I kind of screwed up with the Blade Trinity because and I changed my answer a little. But honestly, you got the win, and I can't really complain. But that speedrun was fun. I really enjoyed that. I can't wait to come back again.
Yeah, definitely. As somebody making their debut, I thought incredibly well thought. I just amazing points brought up. That first speed round with the Jungle Book, amazing arguments made. So definitely one to look out for, even though with an 0-1 record, you're definitely one to look out for in this league, and I hope to see you back here soon. Aaron, thoughts?
Definitely, Jake. I had a lot of fun playing this match. It was great to first off have my debut against you. You're a really great fighter. The score doesn't show how close some of these rounds were because it really was a back and forth. And honestly, I'm surprised I won that second speed round question. But
I felt pretty confident, to be honest.
it was fun to finally play instead of host. I don't know which is more stressful.
Hosting is more stressful.
Yeah, probably hosting. This is more fun. But no, it was great to finally play and be a part of this. I also am glad that I was able to pull out the victory today because I think from here on out, when I judge, it validates that I do understand the game. That's a worry that I've always had, being the only admin who hadn't played a match. I never had really a shot to prove that I knew what I was talking about. It's easy to sit there and listen and judge people on what they're saying, but it's harder sometimes to even put your own thoughts out there and argue for stuff. But yeah. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing it. The round that I lost was definitely my weakest round by far. Jake definitely deserved the win there. Some of the other rounds were back and forth, so I'm glad I was able to pull it out.
Definitely, I will say of
it was a lot
the matches.
Fun. I look forward to playing again, and I look forward to just being a part of this.
Absolutely. Of the matches I've hosted, this is definitely, although score may not reflect it, this has definitely been the closest that I've ever seen. Every single round, I feel like every single round I was just barely leaning one way, barely leaning the other way. On a different day with another person, everything's subjective, obviously, but man, such close arguments every single round. Both of you guys, I think, are really, really well matched. Hard fighters. Definitely not ones to overlook in the future of this league. So as we sign out, Jake, where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Pretentious Hack. The P and the H are caps. I'm going to be on the There Will Be Trivia Snowball special. If you're following the There Will Be Trivia, I'm going to be in the newbie singles where I'll be facing Brooklyn Vale. We had a bit of back and back on Facebook, so you can see me there on November 18th. Awesome. Looking forward to that. And I just want to say congratulations to Aaron. I think that was definitely a deserved win. I left a little holes in some of my arguments, but I would say that call me up and I'll be back. I definitely will be back, like the Terminator. I will be back.
Well fought, Jake. And Aaron,
you definitely have a second match.
Aaron, where can we find you?
You guys can find me on Instagram at Aaron T. Connole. Other than that, every plug that Robert's about to do, I say ditto and do it.
Alrighty, and as for the aforementioned plugs, you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at RBRTPRKR98. It's a weird handle, I know, get over it.
It's his name without vowels.
It's my name without vowels, there you go. Thank you very much, Aaron. You're the first one to ever recognize that. Anyways, I'm Robert Parker. You can make sure, please, if you enjoyed this video, drop a comment, drop a like if you think we deserve it. I think this was a great match, an extremely entertaining one. Talk about all your reactions in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date. Make sure you join the Facebook group to stay up to date where we post all of our matches. From all of us admins here at Movie Battleground, we hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.